Okay, you are live.
Thank you so much. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Building Energy Code Working Group off session series of meetings. Today is Thursday, June 26, 2025. I am Scott Campbell, representative from St. Johnsbury and chair of this group. I was co-chair last year. This is a two-year working group. I was co-chair last year with Senator Chris Bray, who was not reelected. So I'm assuming the chairpersonship. So I thought we would start with just going around and introducing each person, introducing themselves and saying a little bit about where you're joining from and what your interest is. And let's start with that. So I guess maybe I should pick people off of the screen here since otherwise nobody will know who goes next. So I'm looking at Richard at the top of my screen. Why don't you go ahead, Richard? Hope you're muted, Richard.
That would help. Lawnmowers in the background, sorry for that. I'm actually not a member of the Building Energy Code Working Group, but was staff on it the last couple of years. I am a principal Energy Futures Group, been involved in the codes since the beginning in Vermont, and you'll be hearing more from Zach and me regarding our Department of Energy Energy Code administration work that we're doing for the state of Vermont.
And Zach.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, Zach Tyler, managing consultant at Energy Futures Group. Have been working with Richard on a DOE award around Vermont Residential Energy Code compliance and participated as staff in last year's working group. So happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Looks like Ben. Oh no, Richard's up next, but I don't know if he's with us or not. Well, skip over Richard. Go ahead, Ben.
Hello, everyone. As you've no doubt seen my name on the emails that I've been sending out, I am a thermal efficiency program manager at the Department of Public Service, and I'll be helping to facilitate the meetings this year. So great to meet you all.
Sandy. Hello, Sandy. Good to see you.
Hi, folks. So Matt Bushy's not able to represent AIA Vermont this year. The regular meetings coincide exactly with a job site meeting. And so I am currently the representative for AIA Vermont.
And Colin.
Hi there, Jennifer Colin. That's okay.
I was going Colin Frisbee. That's fine. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just heard the last name. Sorry. So I'm Jennifer Colin. I'm general counsel right now for the Office of Professional Regulation. Monday, my title is changing. I'm going to be the director of that agency, and we're going to have a new general counsel coming in here pretty quickly. And OPR currently regulates residential contractors. So that's how we're involved in this work group, and we've been tasked by the legislature with creating specialty certifications relating to building energy. So we're in that process, and sorry for going out of turn.
No, that's fine. And Richard, I see you're back, so why don't you go ahead? We're just doing introductions right now.
Richard, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with an OSHA issue in-house. My name's Richard Wabi. I'm Executive Vice President of the Associated General Contractors, and we make up a good lion's share of the building going across Vermont right now. So how this affects the pricing and the delivery of housing and development is somewhat important to us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Colin Frisbee.
Thank you. Sorry, I was having technology troubles. I'm Colin Frisbee from Sterling Homes in South Burlington. I've been an alternate on this group for, I don't know, as long as the group has been around, representing home builders, and have been part of the energy code updates as they've happened since they started happening. So I'm here as an alternate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mike DeRocher.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike DeRocher, the Executive Director for the Division of Fire Safety. I know most of you here, I've been involved in these discussions probably before this group was assembled, I'm afraid. So, I think most people not realize what we do, but we regulate all the permitting for construction of all public buildings across the state. We license, certify, and register a number of trade professions. And just glad to see everybody again, and we'll join in all these conversations over the summer. And of course, our concern here is what does this mean for the Division of Fire Safety? How does it affect our business process? How does it impact our permitting? And how we interact with all our other constituents that we are engaged with. So I look forward to working with everybody.
Great. Sarah Meerhoff.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications for AGC Vermont. So ditto everything that Richard said earlier. We're going to be kind of tag teaming these meetings because you know how summer scheduling goes. So nice to meet those of you who I haven't met previously.
Great. Sarah, you should send your email to, I guess, to Kelly also, so that we make sure we include you on the email list.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And Keith.
Hi, everyone. Keith Levinson, also from the Department of Public Service. I work on the energy codes as part of my responsibilities, so I'll be joining as a technical reference for any technical questions we have, and maybe tag teaming with Kelly if she's unable to attend.
And Keith, will you or Kelly or somebody will be sort of tracking all the participants and getting their contact information and all that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And Kelly.
Hi, Kelly Launder. I'm the Assistant Director of the Efficiency and Energy Resources Division in the Department of Public Service. And we, as Keith mentioned, we promulgate the rules to adopt the residential and the commercial building energy standards as one of the many things we do at the department.
Great, thanks. Senator Seth Bongartz.
Hi, everybody. Seth Bongartz. I represent Bennington County in the Senate. And I've been involved in housing issues as the author of the HOME Act, S100, and one of the co-authors of Act 181. I don't have a ton of expertise like everybody else in this room does on the exact topic that we're talking about, but I'm very interested. And I was asked to serve as the Senate rep, so here I am.
Great. Let's see, Karen Horn.
Hi, I'm Karen Horn, and I'm representing Vermont Gas in the Efficiency Department, along with Tim Perrin. If one of us can't make it, the other one will try to cover, and we're here to support market uplift or any potential overlap with our programs.
Okay, great. And Karen, also, please make sure you get your email to Keith, I guess. Let's see, Chris Burns.
Hi, everybody. Chris Burns, representing the city of Burlington, wearing two hats. One, BED is a appointed energy efficiency utility, and RBs and CBs are important parts of that as they serve as our baseline for many projects. But we also provide technical assistance to the city's Department of Permitting and Inspections, who really tries to inform contractors and building owners of RBs and CBs on every permit that gets pulled. So we're very pleased to see that and looking forward to working with this group.
Great. Tim Perrin.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Perrin. I manage our energy efficiency programs here at Vermont Gas Systems, and I'll be tag teaming representation within this committee with Karen Horn, who you met earlier. Thank you.
Great. Let's see, Jim Bradley.
Yes, good afternoon. Jim Bradley. I'm a builder, also an energy auditor, HERGerator, and a partner with Efficiency Vermont and their EEN network of contractors. Here to, and also a representative of how would you say, an advisor to OPR for the contractor registry. So I'm definitely interested to see how we can move things forward to basically make sure that the housing stock built in Vermont is done as safely as possible, durable as possible, and as efficient as possible. And hopefully we can make some really great progress this year.
Great. Steve Spatz.
Right. Hi, everybody. Steve Spatz with Efficiency Vermont. I have been in our supply chain account management team for many years, as well as being a supporter of our EEN contractors in our program. Through that work, recently appointed a trade ally training manager with Efficiency Vermont. So I've been doing the bulk of the ARBIES code trainings over the past 5 to 7 years. And a part of this work that EFG is doing with Zach and with Richard, as far as that DOE supported grant fund, to do code outreach and support. And I have the opportunity to be able to focus on that work moving forward. So I've been a part of the matrix of outreach and training on building science and code support through Efficiency Vermont over the years. So thanks for, I'm also stepping into Matt Sharp's role here on this advisory committee. He had been a part of this last year, and I am taking his place for this session going through the next 6 months. So thanks for having me.
Great. Great to have you, Steve. Thank you. I think the last person is Liz Steele.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm an interested member of the public. I'm also a chair of the Energy Committee here in Greensboro, where I live, and we are looking at doing something around homeowner education of the ARBIES standards and commitments that they need to consider when building or renovating homes. I'm part of the Vermont Council on Rural Development Climate Catalyst Leadership Program this year, and I've chosen an ARBIES education program as my project that I'm working on. And I met with Richard and Zach earlier this week, and they mentioned this working group and the presentation today. So I thought I would listen in.
Well, terrific. And these discussions, these meetings will be recorded and posted on the Department of Public Services website. But if you want to be advised of the meetings as they come along and join, you're welcome to do that. We will be meeting in person for the rest of the next 5 meetings. But if you wanted to join on the Zoom, you can do that as well, and just make sure you get your contact information to Keith for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right.
But I also want to mention that Chris Campany, the representative for the Regional Planning Commissions, said he might be a little late, but he's planning to join as well. I don't see him on the list yet, but I just wanted to mention he might be popping up.
Yes, thank you. I think he might be the last person. I think everyone else who's in the group is here.
Scott?
Yes, sir.
And then I'll sit back. Could we, in a future email, identify the actual appointed members to this committee and thusly the actual voting members of this committee?
That was sent out. The list was sent out with the last email with the meeting materials, but I'm happy to send it out again because it did not have Sandy listed. We just found that out this morning. So
okay.
I can make that change. And I believe, Keith, do we not also have them listed on the web page, everyone?
Yes, we do. I don't think I've made the change to substitute Sandy, but I will do that. Okay.
We'll do that right away and get that back out to everyone with emails.
Thank you.
Yep.
I also notice that Craig Peltier is not here. right now, and I believe he is going to be passing his role on to someone else, to Polly Major at BHCB. So
Yeah, I can give people an update on that. He told me he's on vacation this week, but he'll be at the next 2 meetings.
okay, all right.
And also, I think Mr. Tucker might be missing.
Oh yes, Peter Tucker.
Scott, I just noticed I was about to send out the link to our webpage that has all this information, but I noticed the chat is disabled. Is there a reason for that, or can we enable the chat?
The chat does not function in these meetings. The only I'm at the State House. My name is Megan Canella, and the chat, if you use the chat, it only comes to me.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Okay.
That's a function of safety from the State House end.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, that's good to find out now. We might have to remind people, Scott, at the beginning of meetings that about that because people are used to using chat to ask questions and such. So we might need to remind people that they need to raise their hand if they have a question or clarification, because the chat function will only go won't go out to the group.
Yeah, okay. That's too bad. All right. Well, we're going to start this meeting with Richard and Zach giving us a little update on where we are. I think everybody is aware of the issue of energy code compliance, the fact that we have legally required energy codes, mandatory energy codes, but we don't really have any enforcement mechanism or any penalty for them, so that much of the public and even some builders are unaware that we've had these energy codes now for more than 25 years on the residential side. So we're trying to assess how we can increase compliance with these mandatory energy codes without with a carrot and not a stick, and that's the challenge. But that's kind of where we are. So Richard and Zach, I will pass it to you.
Thanks, Scott. Let me get these slides up for everybody.
Yeah, so as Zach's getting the slides up, we're going to share the presentation. We were asked to present some of the work that we've been doing over the past year and a half as a sort of starting point of this group's work. From our perspective, it's a lot of it is the accumulation of all of the great work that many people in this group and others have been doing over the past number of years to get us here. So I think like other work, sort of building on the shoulders of others to get here. So as a result as well too, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on background and history. We sort of pulled those slides from this presentation, which we've shared with others over the past year. If that's helpful at some point in time, we can certainly do that. I mean, we have them, but we thought it'd be more fruitful given the short number of meetings that this group has and wanting to make progress to sort of more look forward more so than look backwards. So, but that is an offer out there we can put on the table if that would be helpful to do a little background on this. So with that, maybe
everybody can see the slides, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, I can go to the next slide. So a little bit of an acknowledgement disclaimer. I'll just give a quick overview of this project that we've been working on. So Energy Futures Group applied really on the behalf of Vermont, since there's an opportunity that seemed ripe for where Vermont was in trying to advance our energy code compliance efforts. And there wasn't an agency that was able or willing to step up and go after the funding. So we did so in partnership with the Secretary of State's office. We needed to have a state agency as a partner. So thanks, Jen, and your boss, Sarah Copeland-Hansis, who serves in that role. We were successful. We applied for a $5 million grant. We ended up receiving a $1 million grant, and over a 3-year period of time, split into 2 budget periods. So this is our sort of mandatory disclaimer acknowledgement from the DOE that we've been doing this work on their using federal funds, but views expressed are not necessarily there. So you can move to the next slide, which summarizes. Okay, so I'll do a little bit of background in terms of where we are with this project, but really want to focus primarily on the 3 pathways for compliance upgrades, improving compliance in the state. Zach will lead us through those, and then I'll pick up the recommendations at the end. So the next slide, a little background. So the project that we've been working on, the Vermont Building Energy Code compliance project, in partnership with many of the organizations that are on this working group, we're successful at winning that $1 million grant, and really had the focus really being on energy code compliance rates in the state. So we don't have, as many of you know, we don't have a formal compliance enforcement mechanism for the energy code. It really relies on builders understanding the code, builders and designers understanding the code, designing and building to it, and then signing a certificate that the building was built to those standards. And if there are any issues, then it sort of falls back on a litigation procedure. But there's no, unlike most every other state, there's no sort of formal enforcement mechanism in place. So given the construct of where we were in Vermont, the efforts that we've been working on under this DOE grant included developing the plan that we'll talk about today. This is sort of the culmination of the first 1.5 years of work. A lot of training and education. So as Steve Spatz mentioned, VEIC is a key partner in this, along with the other efficiency utilities, but really Steve and team have been leading the outreach efforts, developed 10 trainings, done a lot of work out in the field, providing education for builders and contractors. We've also been working closely too with the Vermont planning and development agencies, basically our regional planning commissions throughout the state. So have done a lot of outreach. We've done 5 different training sessions for municipal staff, so towns, cities, select board members, planning commission people, energy committees, others that are associated on the municipal side. Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, Efficiency Vermont, has also allocated a couple staff people to provide the role of circuit riders, and they've been going out on site, providing guidance and suggestion, virtual as well as on-site support and technical assistance to building projects. We have been working with, as Jen mentioned, Office of Professional Regulation on helping them stand up a contractor certification program as a voluntary effort under the contractor registry efforts there, and along the way been convening a advisory committee that's helped guide this effort. So this DOE grant, as I mentioned, was a 3-year grant. The first budget period ends on Monday, June 30th of this year. The second budget period was supposed to have started July 1st. But as all of us are probably aware, The current administration has not been very supportive of these types of activities at the state level. And despite the fact that we have met all of our milestones, the agreed upon milestones with the Department of Energy and our partners on a timely basis, when there were staff there, reviewed and made the upgrades and changes that were requested. We applied back in March for a continuing application, but the feds will not provide any guidance or assurance of this grant moving forward. So we are under the operating assumption that we will not receive the second half of the funds going forward. So we pretty much are wrapping up our work under this grant, despite the fact that we've still got half of the funding that was appropriated and obligated, but we've not received permission to continue the training, continue the work going forward. So we're ceasing it at this point in time until we hear otherwise. And despite the fact that we've asked at least every other week what their plans are for approving budget period 2, they have said that they're not in a position to provide that guidance. So our project is wrapping up at this point in time unless we can find some other funding. We are looking around for that. We are having some conversations with others out there, but at this point in time, this is where this project is pretty much wrapping up with the Energy Code Administration Plan that we'll be presenting today. So not good news on that front, but we feel like we've built a great foundation. We've got some really strong trainings and staff out there, partnerships, and we still have work to do, including just a reminder here that this is why we're doing this work. This is the results of the Department of Public Service conducts market assessment studies every 3 to 5 years, looking at compliance to the energy code, looking backwards. So the orange line represents the code stringency, basically, over time, since it began in 1997. Each of the years along the x-axis is when a market study was done to a version of the code that was rolled out that particular year. So you can see that over time, on the right-hand y-axis, the energy use intensity, or EUI, for each of those codes has gone up. So the stringency of the code has increased, which one would expect. And the blue line is the results of the market assessment study, the field work to determine compliance with the code in the field to the code of that year. So the last study that was done was to the 2015 RB's code, and found 54% compliance to that code. So it was a relatively small sample, so have to take that with a grain of salt. There's some anecdotal information that it may be even less than that. So we generally say we're about half of our residential homes are built to code, plus or minus. Just a note that we're really focusing on RBs here, residential sector. The note in the bottom right, CBs is 87%. Not really, compliance is not really as much of an issue with the commercial code, given that there's usually architects or engineers whose license is sort of on the line, but there's also attention to the detail and the law as part of that. So the focus really has been on the residential sector. Next slide. And just a reminder here too, this is a table that AIA and home builders have provided. It's been shown and used in a number of reports and presentations in the past. But basically, the housing types across the top, the energy code that they comply with, and I think the main takeaway here is that we've got good coverage for energy code and building codes for all of the for the most part in all the public buildings, The last building type on the right-hand column, the owner-occupied single-family homes, they are not covered under the Division of Fire Safety. They're sort of outside of their jurisdiction, as we heard Mike refer to earlier. And so that's really been, there's no enforcement authority. There's no on-site verification. There is a filing and posting certificate before occupancy requirement as part of Act 89, which passed a number of years ago. They are supposed to follow the code, but really, because there is no sort of formal enforcement mechanism and jurisdiction, there's no authority having jurisdiction over single-family owner-occupied homes. That's really been the focus of our work here, both on these previous working groups and also the Energy Code Administration Plan, which we'll be walking through here. So next. So I'm just going to hit at a high level the three pathways for compliance that we came up with. We've been working with many of you to get to this point. I'm just going to hit them at a high level, Zach, and then turn things over to Zach, and he'll provide a little more detail on each of these. So we've really sort of identified three ways that this working group and the state of Vermont could look at increasing energy code compliance going forward. And they really sort of go from left to right here, from more or less business as usual, sort of what we've been doing in the past, to something that's more stringent and comprehensive. We've named them. We're not wedded to these, but these have sort of been convenient descriptive names for each of these three pathways: a technical assistance pathway, an energy professionals pathway, and the Division of Fire Safety administrative pathway. So at a high level, the TA pathway would continue to provide limited state support for energy code administration, training and education, really as the focus of, as it has been, really consistent with how the state currently operates. A step up would be more consciously and intentionally engaging energy professionals in the process. So we sort of generally are calling those professionals that work in the energy space who has some sort of certification. Generally think about it as a home energy rating system or HERS rater, but it could also include the Building Performance Institute or BPI certifications. There are about 100, and then the other broad category is the Passive House group as well, to Passive House certified professionals. This could also include architecture engineers as well too, but generally those are the certifications that we've sort of recognized as having strong building science background training. They own and operate blower doors and other diagnostic equipment in the field. They understand the building practices and energy codes in general. So we are suggesting that one opportunity here would be to put in place legislation that requires some sort of engagement of energy professionals in all projects as a step up that we think would help increase compliance. Having a professional involved with every project. The funding for that could come from the market. The professionals, it's a market instead of bringing new staff into administration and into agencies or other existing state administration infrastructure. The market currently right now does pay for services for different professionals. This could be one of those as well too, that the market could derive that pricing. So as well too, as part of this, the energy efficiency utilities could provide some subsidies. Right now, Steve can speak to this later, but there are incentives that Efficiency Vermont offers when HERS raters are engaged in projects to help that project achieve certain energy efficiency standards. So with the energy efficiency utilities being able to recognize the savings that result from having an energy professional engaged in the project, there is an incentive for them. There's benefit for the EEUs to provide incentives in exchange for that savings that is created. So there could be some spot checking of compliance documents by the state. Right now, there is no sort of back end checking to make sure that those RB certificates are valid. Do they match what's actually done on site? So there's some details around that could be part of that. The third pathway forward, the DFS administrative pathway, would involve state support and some engagement of that role at the agency level, the Division of Fire Safety, enforcement as well too of the residential sector. This would involve increasing staff as part of that as well too for doing compliance, plan review, verification activities, and would expand the DFS's jurisdiction into single-family owner-occupied homes that's not part of their jurisdiction currently. So Zach will get into, is there one more slide before I turn things over to you, Zach? Okay, there are a couple influences, and then I'll turn things over to Zach. So clearly we've been talking about all of these different aspects of all of these for a while. We sort of boiled them down to these three pathways as options going forward. But clearly, any direction the state heads will be influenced by a number of different factors. So part of this is the DOE grant. I didn't say that it was called the Resilient and Efficient Codes Initiative. So that's the official name of the DOE grant we're under. As I mentioned, right now, that funding is not slated to continue, although it may at some point. The EU's ability to claim savings from energy code support could impact how much money is available for energy professionals to play a role in some of these projects. DFS implementing a new permit database or record management system is covering all public buildings and expanding it beyond that could be an impact as well too. Changes to mortgage industry or insurance standards, which has been a discussion at a national level, could be an influencer. And then, of course, there's always the politics, legislation, however the political interests, whims, and the decision makers' willingness to administer energy codes always comes into play as well. So with that, I think turning things over to you.
One more. Interrupt 1 second. Oh, all right. We got one more slide.
Okay, one more, and then I'll turn it over to Zach. So just as a reminder, we do have the Vermont Comprehensive Energy Plan. This is all sort of predicated. This is sort of a foundational piece behind a lot of this work. We have this the plan in here. To achieve net zero ready construction for all newly constructed buildings by 2030 through building energy standards. So that's getting closer and closer, not that far away. There are discussions underway right now between the Department of Public Service and the Energy Efficiency Utilities to figure out how to claim savings for supporting code compliance. So that is a factor as well. And that sort of feeds into the upcoming 3-year demand resources plan, or DRP. So we do feel that achieving the only way we're going to meet this 2030 standard is through some successful resolution of having the EEUs be able to claim savings for this work. It's going to be really an important component to all of this as well too. So this is sort of a presumption and something that's going on in the background. The department and EBT could provide more information, but it is a really important factor if there's interest from the EEUs in achieving higher compliance rates, and there's going to be some funding that goes along with that. So sorry, go ahead, Scott. I think that's it. And I think turn things over to Zach now.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to interrupt 1 second. First of all, to welcome Chris Campany. Chris, you want to introduce yourself just quickly?
Hi, Chris Campany, Executive Director, Wyndham Regional Commission.
Okay.
And I guess I've been a member of the committee since its inception.
Yes, thank you. And I also wanted to take a break and see if there are any questions before we go on to Zach's portion of it.
I have one quick question. This is Sandy. I understand that Public Service has a new study for compliance underway. I don't know if it's RBs plus CBs. I'm curious what the timeline for that is. It could affect this report that we're working on.
Yeah, that is just getting started. We're actually, I think, still finalizing the contracts. So, I don't know. Keith, do you have any? We can email out. Let me get more specifics on the timeline, Sandy, and maybe just email it would be better because I don't know offhand the timelines. So I can get that out separately.
I think we have a little insight into that because we are part of that team, and our sense, I think, is that the on-sites probably wouldn't happen earliest until next winter or so. So I think that's the time. I mean, Kelly would have that more so than, but our sense is that it probably wouldn't be in time for a November report to the legislature.
Do you think it would be in time for testimony during the session? Which seems
I don't know.
important.
I asked to push on those timelines, Richard, so that's why I didn't want to say anything. So I don't know what happened with that. So let's let me get something out when I know more specifically, and it does include CBs too. That could be a separate timeline too. So I'll get back to everyone.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Take it away, Zach.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to do a bit of a deeper dive on each of these three pathways that we've put forward in this Energy Code Administration Plan as options for the state. Moving forward, I think it's good to think of these as sort of independent potential pathways for the state to pursue. Though it's certainly possible that you could transition from one to another over time, they really are intended to be sort of independent, unique pathways for Energy Code Administration. So we'll start with the technical assistance pathway. As Richard alluded to, this really is sort of what the state has been doing, and our suggestions in the Energy Code Administration Plan really just revolve around sort of increasing the level of effort potentially associated with some of these activities. So the key elements of a technical assistance pathway are training and education, as Richard alluded to, engaging energy professionals, though in a way where there are no real requirements around that. It's just something that's beneficial and that the state and market and stakeholders could be pushing for as part of this pathway. Richard mentioned the EU's potential increased role in energy code support, and I'll talk through the funding mechanisms associated with each of these pathways, including the technical assistance pathway. As far as training and education goes specifically, so Efficiency Vermont does regular trainings with builders and designers around the energy codes. Steve Spatz, who's here, leads a lot of that work. Richard mentioned as part of our RECCE grant activities, we have been conducting municipal training and support activities. That's something that could also continue under a technical assistance pathway. I will just say, as sort of a caveat, I think we've had some really good feedback from the municipal outreach efforts that have taken place as part of the DOE training activities. There's also the Energy Code Assistance Center that provides technical support on the energy codes. And there's advanced technical support for Efficiency Excellence Network builders and contractors. So these are the Efficiency Excellence Network is something that Efficiency Vermont runs, and they provide additional support for builders and contractors who are registered as part of that network. And lastly, here is Circuit Rider technical assistance. This is something that has been taking place through the Recce grant activities. If those continue in the future, that's something that would be picked up as part of those activities. So this is sort of direct on-site or virtual on-site hands-on feedback and support for builders and contractors around energy code compliance issues. As far as energy professionals specifically go and the technical assistance pathway, what we've put forth in the plan is that the state could encourage contractors to partner with energy professionals, and as part of that, really highlighting the value of code compliant homes, highlighting any potential EU incentives that exist for energy professional services, as well as any national incentives for efficient construction that builders and contractors may also be eligible for, were they to include an energy professional in their project. One example of that is a 45L tax credit. Who knows how much longer that's going to be available, but it's available right now. And energy professionals are in a position to provide technical assistance to builders and contractors under this pathway. This is purely technical assistance and support. There's no enforcement here. It's just getting these folks engaged in these projects has immense value. They can provide energy modeling, they can provide diagnostic results, and they're very familiar with building science and presumably can help interpret some of the code requirements as well. As far as funding mechanisms for technical assistance pathway, so we've mentioned the energy efficiency utilities. They cannot currently claim savings from energy code support, but that's something that's potentially on the table moving forward. They do, however, currently offer subsidies and incentives for builders and contractors that are pursuing projects with energy professionals. So there's some support for energy professionals and the technical assistance pathway coming from the EUs already. The Department of Public Service supports training and education activities through federal and grant funds, perhaps other funding streams as well, but definitely has historically been a critical component of the training and education outreach that we'd expect to continue under a technical assistance pathway. I mentioned incentives and tax credits. Those are listed here as another way to help fund these type of activities. And lastly, just contractor fees. So contractors will be required to sort of pay some amount for things like an energy professional or training and examination. So we mentioned the Office of Professional Regulation and voluntary certifications that are being developed for residential contractors. That's a type of thing that contractors may have to at least pay for in part out of their own pocket. And so that'd be sort of part of the funding strategy for technical assistance pathway. Kelly, I see a note that you have a hand raised.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out where to even do that. So it's under the React button, everyone. So I think I read in your draft pathway paper that this would also have the energy professionals filling out the certificates and certifying that the building meets code. Is that correct?
That was in our draft plan under the energy professionals pathway, which we haven't gotten to yet, but I'll also say we've removed
Oh, I'm sorry.
that.
This is still the TA pathway. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I jumped ahead.
But we also removed that, Kelly, based on sort of discussions with stakeholders as we revised our plan, which we just finished revisions well, it's not actually formally revised. Finals due on Monday. But we've removed that piece after hearing about concerns about liability and that sort of thing on behalf of the energy professionals. So just as an update for you.
Okay, thanks. Sorry to jump ahead.
No problem. Appreciate the question.
Yeah.
Richard.
So you mentioned training and education, and I know you do a great deal of online training. And most of this is delivered online, am I correct?
Steve, maybe you can speak to that briefly?
And let me just continue and then I'll shut my mic off. Is there a database other than the OPR database, but is there a database or a complete number of contractors that have attended those trainings?
Yes, we have that data from internal work that we've been doing and the work that I've been doing for many years through Efficiency Vermont and the EEN and outreach on our end, and then also specifically through the deliverables for this grant that we've been working with EFG on. So as part of the deliverables for that grant project with DOE, we have, there were accountable numbers that we were targeting to meet as far as numbers of attendees to trainings and number of trainings delivered. And so to Richard's point earlier on here today, the performance period ending here at the end of this month, we have delivered all of those metrics that were outlined in that grant as far as expectations go. And so we can share that information, or Richard, Zach, you guys can share that information with the committee here as far as what those numbers look like. But Richard, it has been a mix of recorded content and in person. So quite honestly, I'd rather be in front of human beings than sitting in front of my computer talking into the screen. But we have seen good results and attendance for those webinars because it is, frankly, from the convenience standpoint. But it's seasonal as far as the attendance and reach when you do the in-person trainings, and mainly during the winter months into the spring. And that was part of the targeted effort of what we did in this grant project, was to take advantage of that opportunity of working with the supply chain, working with building suppliers, HVAC suppliers, to reach contractors and their customers during the downtime of the construction season to do in-person trainings. And then the balance of that being done as recorded webinars that are, in-person live events, and then they're recorded, and we have those available as online, freely accessible trainings that anyone can, click into at any point. So
just quickly, you could provide a list of contractors or organizations that attended, not people, but organizations that attended. And if I'm hearing you correctly, there's really no testing or piece at the end of this. It's just watch the video and you're good.
It depends on whether or not you're seeking professional credit for a membership organization that grants continuing education credits. For an in-person event, that meets the criteria for AIA and BPI specifically, which is whom we've been granting continuing education credits for as external partners outside of what Efficiency Vermont EEN requirements are. So in those scenarios, if it's an in-person training, then it's considered the person's attended and they've gained the content and credit is granted. If it's an online training, a recorded webinar, there are requirements from AIA and BPI that there is a quiz associated with the event that grants them the credit. So it's a little bit of a mix of both.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that.
I have a question also about this slide, claiming savings, the EU's claiming savings. And I don't know if this is for Steve or maybe Kelly, or there has been conversation about finding a way for the energy efficiency utilities to claim savings for meeting code, in other words, for code compliance, rather than exceeding code, which is the premise of energy savings above normal practice. There's been conversation about figuring out a way to assess what normal practice is if it's not quite to code, and then find a way to credit savings to the EEUs, which would allow them to then provide some funding for activities to help contractors meet code. I think there's been talk about another way of doing that that wouldn't actually involve coming up with that what is standard practice, what is normal practice now, that would still allow EEUs to use some of their funding from existing thermal efficiency funding that would allow them to be able to use some funds to help contractors meet code. Steve, can you talk to that, or maybe Kelly?
I'll just say that that's a conversation that's still ongoing, and I'll hand it over to Kelly to comment on that.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, it is still ongoing. And I will say right now, I believe, Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the programs actually use, I think they're on the residential side, they actually use information from the market assessment as far as what can be claimed savings on. And sometimes it's probably below code and sometimes it's above code, actually, what's actually happening out in the market. So, but yeah, we're in the process of discussing that. I think also I've mentioned, probably not in this group yet, but this market assessment we're getting ready to do right now, we're also going to look at for homes or buildings, I should say, because it's on both commercial and res. For buildings that don't comply with code, we're trying to assess how much like energy savings are there or foregone or however you want to say it, to really see. Because I mean, a lot of times if something doesn't comply, it's not necessarily like it's falling down building. It's like one measure, like the basement insulation a lot of times is off. So how much is left on the table, energy savings is left on the table, how much there's there. I think one consideration for people to think about is we don't think that there's a ton of savings there. So that might not be a panacea of like, oh, they can claim savings. There's a ton of savings. So therefore there can be a huge investment. We don't, I mean, we're going to see, that's one of the reasons we're looking at it, but we don't really think that. So we're also looking at potential other options. Not everything that the EEUs do are tied to savings. There are funds that go out different ways through their non-resource acquisition and other ways that pay for things that aren't necessarily tied to energy savings. So there are a variety of different options, and we're currently discussing it because we're going into the next performance period's demand side resource plan process right now. So.
And any sense, I know we've talked about this, Kelly, any sense of timing on this? Maybe by the end of this calendar year or something like that, we might have some resolution?
You mean as far as the plan?
Well, as far as to what extent funding could be available to EEUs to assist with code compliance that is not necessarily tied to savings.
Well, we're in discussions on how this might work. Now the EEUs will typically put in their proposals for their plan the end of this year, then December, and then that kicks off the process of comments and testimony and everything going into 2026. And then the performance period starts 2027, January of 2027.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
I see Sandy's got a hand up also.
Yeah, while we're on this slide, I just want to point something out, and it's really only relevant if this information is going to go forward in the new report. But under contractor fees, things that are overhead for a contractor like training and examinations, that is a contractor fee and it just raises their cost of doing business. But something that is specific to a project, like I'm thinking the energy professional services is under that category, where it would be for a certain address, those are going to be passed on 100% to the homeowner. So it's not really fair to call them contractor fees.
Thanks for that comment, Sandy. Noted. It's a good point. Great. Well, Thank you for that. I don't think there are any other questions currently. So I'll keep moving along. That was it for the technical assistance pathway. So again, just to sort of summarize, I would say that's really a continuation of what the state has historically been doing, but maybe with a little extra emphasis around additional training and education activities, perhaps continuing or building off of what the RECCE grant has been able to do, and perhaps more of an emphasis on trying to get energy professionals engaged voluntarily. With that, I'll dig into the details on the energy professionals pathway. So key elements of this pathway would be legislation, engaging energy professionals, state oversight, and again, I'll go through funding mechanism. So for this pathway, what we're proposing is that there would be legislation specifically requiring energy professional involvement in all residential new construction projects. I would say what that involvement specifically entails could certainly be subject for follow-up conversation. We're not explicit in our plan about what that would be, but the reality is the code requires diagnostic testing that in theory, most builders or contractors would need to have an energy professional involved in the project to meet that requirement. So at a minimum, sort of diagnostic testing support, I think would be part of this process. Under this pathway, energy professionals would be responsible for helping to document compliance with the RBs. And Kelly, to your previous question, we have revised the plan to reflect that builders and contractors would, as they are now, be responsible for submitting the RB certificate associated with the project. We did have some draft language around energy professionals being the party to actually submit RB certificates, and heard from a variety of stakeholders about some concerns around liability there on behalf of the energy professionals. So we've sort of reverted back to the current system as far as that goes in our recommendations for this pathway. And we do have, again, I think the scope and level of rigor here would certainly be part of a conversation where the state to pursue this pathway, but some level of spot verification or oversight from the state would be part of this pathway. So basically ensuring that an energy professional actually was involved in a project. So that could be as simple as updating the RB certificate to have a field for listing the energy professional and just sort of verifying that that's populated. And then also, maybe some minimal verification that the values on a form actually are indicative of compliance, or that they're at least relevant to the current version of the RB's code that's in effect. And so again, I think the details here certainly would be negotiated, but the idea is that there would be legislation sort of mandating an energy professional be involved in every project, and some level of oversight from the state ensuring that that actually came to fruition. Kelly.
I'm sorry that I don't remember this from reading your previous draft, but did you have cost estimates for these different pathways?
Outside of the technical assistance, yes, I have a slide here about energy professional fees, and then we have some information for the DFS pathway as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. Again, I'm getting ahead of you. I apologize.
No problem. No, good question. Sarah.
Hey there. Could you just run through again point number 2 and what you were saying about liability? I'm a little confused on what exactly you meant by that.
Sure. So not everybody in this working group, but I think at least the members of the previous working group from last year received a copy of our draft energy code administration plan. And this presentation is really summarizing what's in that plan. And in our initial draft, we had some language around energy professionals actually being the party to sign and submit an RB certificate to the state as proof of compliance. And there was some concerns from stakeholders about the liability associated with that. That responsibility currently is on the builder or contractor of a project. And so what we're saying here is just that would sort of continue to be the case. Energy professionals would need to be engaged in the project. There would need to be some proof or evidence that they were engaged in a project, but that the actual submission of an RB certificate would still be the responsibility of the builder or GC of the project.
You know, and maybe just to add to that too, I think that some of the energy professionals were concerned that since they're just coming in at a snapshot on the project and doing some testing, they weren't there during the whole construction, so they don't know what's behind every wall. And you know, and hidden in every location there, like the builder does. So I think they felt a little nervous, sort of signing off that every aspect of the building that's captured in the RB certificate. They didn't want to take that responsibility and felt like that was more appropriate for the builder to take that on, given that they were there over the whole course of the project.
Sandy?
It's important not to get too bogged down while you're trying to do an overview, but I think this is something to bookmark for future. Immediately what comes to my mind is what model are you trying to copy? For instance, CBs, the architect has to sign off. And so what's generally expected is that the architect is familiar enough to be able to sign off. And so one would expect that in this case, the energy professional would be familiar enough to sign off. And really, they need to just buy liability insurance. And they may have to raise the cost of taking care of one building. I know I've talked with Jim Bradley about this, who does certifications. And I've interviewed other professionals, and to do a more thorough process that could include signing off is more like $5,000 for a house. Thanks.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, I'll get into the costs here momentarily. But before that, quickly, just some notes on sort of engaging energy professionals. So the way we have been thinking about this as a potential pathway for the state is that engagement with energy professionals would be similar on the TA path as the TA pathway, but required by statute. So energy professionals would not sort of be viewed as the code enforcement police, rather as a professional that's part of the project team that is there to assist with energy code compliance. And any tasks sort of related to that. I'd say that is consistent with how, say, a state like Massachusetts is run, where there's not an explicit requirement necessarily that an energy professional is involved, but they require HERS ratings for many projects in the state. That does require an energy professional. So they are not the code police. They're hired by builders and contractors to generate HERS scores for projects. That is part of the compliance process for the builder or contractor, but there's still you know, a code official that's actually verifying that information. And so that's what we're getting at here, that the energy professionals would not be the ones saying, hey, we can't, you know, issue a certificate of occupancy because you're not meeting a certain requirement. Their job might be to let the builder or contractor know that, hey, it looks like you're falling short here. We might want to address that before finalizing or closing up this wall, whatever the case may be. But ultimately, you know, it would not be their job to enforce, rather to advise. Okay, funding mechanism. So this is just sort of an overview of how we envision this would work. So market-based is the idea. So energy professionals all have their own pricing mechanisms. They run their own businesses. Builders, contractors get a quote from an energy professional for services, and we'd anticipate that continuing, that's how this would look, and prices would vary by home size, by the compliance pathway that a builder's interested in using, along with, a variety of other factors. So it would be a market-based sort of fee associated with energy professional services. We would anticipate or envision some financial support from the EU. So we've been talking about this a lot, but there are currently EU incentives for HERS raters. So Efficiency Vermont provides a $750 incentive to builders or contractors that meet their high performance certification program. And so they offer an incentive for HERS raters up to $750 for builders pursuing certification with their residential new construction program credentials. They also just extended that to offer that same incentive to residential builders and contractors pursuing energy code compliance using the home energy rating system pathway. So there's currently an EU incentive available to help subsidize the fees associated with energy professionals for builders complying with the energy code using the home energy rating system pathway. So that's something we'd envision continuing and perhaps even expanding under an energy professionals pathway, whether it be the dollar amount available or the types of projects that that type of financial support would be available for. So currently the subsidy is restricted to the home energy rating system compliance pathway. Perhaps if this pathway were pursued, it would be possible to extend that incentive to builders or contractors looking to use the prescriptive plus points pathway or a res check pathway. And that would be another way to help builders and contractors pay for these fees, but not restrict them to the home energy rating system compliance pathway. And again, I have fees here, Sandy, your point stands that you made earlier. So maybe these are homeowner fees instead of contractor fees, but somebody's going to have to help pay the difference between whatever subsidy might be available for an energy professional and the total amount that they are charging.
Zach, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Clarification. So that $750 is on a per project basis, not on a per contractor basis, right?
I believe that is the case. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Per project.
And do we have an estimate of what would be the total cost or fee that a contractor would charge for putting a project through the HERS system or some other?
Yes, we do, which I just pulled up was our next slide.
Okay.
So
All right.
as I mentioned, this is sort of a market-based funding model. So the prices are going to vary by energy professional scope, geographic location of the project. If you're remote if you're remote in the Northeast Kingdom and there's no energy professional around, you might have to pay for their travel, for example. The costs on this slide are intended to be representative, not precise. And this is based on some publicly available information, some engagement with energy professionals as part of our energy code administration plan. A full HERS rating might range from $1,500 to $2,500 currently, depending on the complexity of the project, scope of service. There are other services, though, that energy professionals can provide. It doesn't have to always be a comprehensive HERS rating. For example, diagnostic testing. We spoke with one energy professional, indicated they charge $400 for a blower door test and to assist with an RB's form. Plan review or res check assistance would be another example of a service that might be provided by an energy professional. The same one we spoke with that referenced $400 for a blower door test referenced they charge $200 for res check support and a plan review. And so these prices for these other ancillary services suggest that if the current incentive were made available to projects pursuing compliance under, a package plus points or res check pathway, it's possible that most of the fee could be covered by the current incentive available by the EUs. They're not eligible for that right now. It's only eligible for the full HERS rating. So if it were $1,500, the current incentive would cover half of that cost. But anyway, this hopefully gives a sense of the type of pricing that's out there. I see, Jim, I know you had your hand up first, and then I see Kelly and Sandy, but Jim, let's start with you. You're on mute. Okay. Jim, we'll come back to you. Kelly?
Yeah, so I guess for the recommendation on this one, that an energy professional would have to be involved in every project, like what level are you anticipating that would be? Is it like a HERS rating is like after the fact, right? Just you go in and you do all the testing and stuff, but it sounded to me like you were presenting like they would be more technical assistance throughout a project, maybe be on site once or twice. So I'm having a hard time like reconciling like what you described with all these potential different costs,
Sure. I mean, I'll let Jim or others speak to this, but a HERS rating should include like more comprehensive front to back coverage for a project. So a home energy rating is going to ideally include the energy professional seeing the insulation that's installed, ideally seeing if there's anything poured, insulating before the foundation is poured or the slab is poured, and then coming back after drywall's up to do the blower door test. So there are phases to that inspection service, I would say, Kelly. But the point I was making at the outset is I think the details here, really, we didn't try to be too prescriptive with what the appetite of stakeholders might actually be as far as the details or what would be required. But I think at a minimum, like diagnostic testing and helping with an RB's certificate and ensuring compliance, the details of which would need to be flushed out, certainly.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So Zach, with that, can you hear me now?
Yes, Jim, can hear you.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I was pushing the red microphone thinking that would make it come in, but it didn't. Anyway, with respect to what a HERS rating is able to provide, you engage with the builder and usually the clients or the whole design staff early and often, you first do a projected rating where you look at the plan set, you're doing a review, you're looking at the design, finding out what's going into the building as far as the site orientation, are there renewables, what are the, U factors or R values of each assembly and the mechanicals in the appliances and everything else that's going into this building to see how you can best meet code. And it does allow a lot more latitude than a prescriptive pathway that's offered under RBs. So if you're better in one area, you may not be as good in another, but yet it still equals out. To that end, once you do that projected rating and you start moving forward and you have an understanding, will we meet, the code getting to the 60 or 59 level that we need to for the rating score, you then go forward. And as the building is going along, you still have that relationship where if questions come up, you answer those, you consult with the builder, and it's a helpful process. But with midway, or you're at pre-drywall, but post installation, you go in there and you do a test, you go a review to make sure all the installation is being installed as it should be. And then also you could do an IR camera review if the customer wants that, or the client or the builder, to look for air leakage pathways with a blower door assist. And that helps you make a tighter shell so that after you put the drywall up, the opportunity is lost. You want to get it before the drywall goes up. And at the end of the job, you do a final blower door test and usually a duct leakage test as well. And just make sure everything that had been prescriptively on the plans is actually in place, and you can verify that things are there with taking lots of photos, verifying equipment, and making sure that rating has validity to it. Very helpful pathway. Going back to another thing that you mentioned, Zach, as far as the builder being helped by this process, is we're doing a rating right now for an individual who went to the HERS rating to try to meet code. Unfortunately, they had some oversights where they called us in later in the whole process without the projected pathway, and the drywall was already up, and said, how can you help me? And they're at a 72 and they need 12 more points to get down to a 60. So we're actually working through with them. The most cost effective way to achieve that is actually going with a solar array, but something that's about a 5 kilowatt or less to get them across the finish line, but so they can meet code. And now they're very much engaged with, hey, we've got several other projects coming up. Let's get on this early. So it's helping in that process of getting the boat going in the right direction. As far as cost, though, when you're doing costs on a HERS rating, that $1,500 to $2,500 mark, especially on the $1,500 to $1,800 side, fits more into the multifamily type residential units where they're cookie cutters, where for a rater, you've got the same geometry, the same, floor plan, mechanicals, everything else, and you're just doing the additional testing for each unit and inspection, so your costs are mitigated. But when you go into a one-off single family home that has a lot of complexity to it, especially those who are asking for a HERS rating, they're going to be somebody who's designed something really particular for them, then there's more involved. There could be more travel involved. And so you could have 2 or 3 or more site visits, which geographically that really drives up the cost, as you mentioned previously. So that's where you get into that realm of $2,500 to $5,000, more so for a more effective HERS rating for a custom or single family home in that regard. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, very. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, helpful to definitely highlight like the range of potential costs are going to vary by professional and certainly scope of the project. A 10,000 square foot new home in Stowe is going to be more expensive to conduct a comprehensive energy audit than a 1,000 square foot multifamily unit, to your point, Jim. Sandy.
So I'm just building on what Kelly and Jim have said. If this goes forward as part of the working group's work, I think we need to be very clear about what the basic expectations are. If you're expecting an energy professional to go to all houses in Vermont, and it has to be very clear, and the range of prices have to be very clear. I want to point out further that the $200 you mentioned, that might work for someone to sit in their office and look at a set of plans for 1 to 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours at current billable rates. That does not include a site visit or anything that that has been described is what would normally be covered by a HERS rater. So a HERS rater is going to have to go to a job site at least twice. And if it's a 2-hour drive, that's 4 hours of time just to drive there. So we need to be very clear. Otherwise, we're going to generate, very large problems as this tries to go into practice.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, I think as I've alluded to, agreed, there would be more work to be done here as far as prescribing what the actual requirements would be in terms of minimum scope of service. I think always there would be the option for any builder or contractor to do as much as they want with an energy professional. On your point about like $200 plan review or res check assistance fee, I would argue you're right. That doesn't include a site visit, but an energy professional reviewing a set of plans or helping fill out a res check form would be valuable compared to what's happening now, which is nothing in a lot of cases. So
but they can't help with a res check form unless it's in design phase. That way they would have to go to this job site. And I just want to point out, we as Vermonters do not want to cause a repeat of the problem. If the whole point is to make sure buildings comply, someone at the end of the day has to be responsible. And if it is this case with an energy professional kind of leading the way, that person has to step up and be responsible. They're going to have to carry professional liability, just like architects and engineers do. I want to, just for one example, give a town that has no building permit, Greensboro. 20 years ago, I was working on a house there, and that is optional for a homeowner to hire an architect. And the builder was so inexperienced that they framed all the doors with no jack studs. So what that means is that the doors had no structure. And I'm required by my license to call the engineer who'd worked on the project and make the engineer go to the site. And the engineer had to explain to the homeowner, and it had to be fixed. We do find ourselves in these situations, even though we don't think of ourselves as enforcers. We have a responsibility to make things sure things are done correctly. That is what is missing in the energy codes right now. And I think that's what we're trying to fix.
Thanks, Sandy.
Zach, can I just add back to what Jim said? Like, I would find it really helpful. I don't know how detailed it is. If the information you have in the HERS rating, if you expanded it to like 1,500 to 5,000 range, and he had a really nice, succinct description. It seems like it would only be a couple sentences of like what makes those ranges, what's in those different ranges, right? I think that is really great information.
Yeah, we can add something to the plan around that.
Just so
Certainly.
people
Yep.
understand, like if there is more digging into this, you know, what causes those, because it's a decent size range. I don't want to say it's a
Sure.
big range, you know,
Yeah.
and I thought that description was really helpful from Jim.
Yeah. I would just add that every professional is going to price things differently. So we can add as many caveats as we want, but if you ask for a quote on the same project from 5 different professionals, you're probably going to get 5 different
Yeah,
quotes for what it
I
costs.
mean, just like Jim said, if you hire someone from across the state, like
Right,
I'm not
right,
thinking that,
exactly.
but that's a good thing
Exactly.
to like have people have in their head. Like, yeah, you hire someone from Stowe and you live in Brattleboro, like that's obviously you're gonna pay for that time. But I
Yep.
found it really a helpful, succinct description.
Yeah. Yeah, we can include something along those lines. Thank you.
I see this
Okay.
as a very parallel pathway to the HERS option. So I think if we want to look at this, I think we should discuss the distinctions more specifically between the energy professionals pathway versus the HERS pathway, and why one would be more advantageous than the other, you know, to consider those options as options moving forward. You know, alternatively, Massachusetts, where stretch code is becoming a common denominator for them, and stretch code requirements there require hiring a HERS rater. It takes the code compliance aspect to a different level because it restricts the compliance pathway to using that option out of the 3. And so there is a verification methodology incumbent into working with a HERS rater, whereas the energy professionals pathway here is kind of coming up with our own version of how to provide some level of verification outside of that HERS model. So I'd just like to see further discussion on that over the next few months as we talk about these things, the distinction.
Yeah, and thanks, Steve. And
If
I would
I
just
if I could just insert without raising my hand, sorry, that the other medium pathway, which is I think the one that AI Vermont has been proposing, is that there be a prescriptive pathway indefinitely until IEC gets rid of it, but a prescriptive pathway for most houses, and then an optional pathway of performance with the energy professionals, probably HERS raters, and that could be further incentivized. So sorry to make it more complicated, but there is that both are allowed picture.
So I just as a I don't, you know, I know we want to move forward, but the prescriptive an energy professional could provide services to help the builder, contractor, designer, homeowner comply with the current RB's prescriptive pathway. So I would say, you know, our distinction here is that there's an energy professional involved in the project that brings the expertise, the testing protocols, but we're not restricting it to any one. We're not suggesting that this be restricted to HERS or our res check or prescriptive or, you know, so it's the fact that there's an energy professional associated with it is the main point, and the compliance pathway could be determined based on pricing or other parameters.
Richard, I agree with you. And in fact, I do more of that type of assistance with builders on new construction currently than we do with HERS ratings. And just to help them through the minutia of the current code and actually the 2020 code, where some jobs are finishing up and they're finding that meeting it. But having that input and that assistance is crucial to them.
Thank you, Jim.
Hey, I don't want to derail this conversation because this is really the meat of it and really great. But we are running way over my guesstimate about how long these
sorry.
various, discussions we're going to take. So let's move on. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, just one more pathway, Scott, and maybe we can hold questions and comments until we're through the slides for this last one. So the last pathway we've put forward in the plan is a DFS administrative pathway. So our vision is that this would continue sort of with the technical assistance pathway elements. So still have aspects of training and education taking place through the EUs and others. The administrative responsibilities for DFS would evolve over time under this pathway. We would envision legislation mandating sort of state level energy code administration. DFS would be named as the AHJ, which is something this group has talked about last year, and was it Act 49 working group?
47.
Act 47, thank you, sorry. I wasn't part of that one. Under this pathway, Division of Fire Safety staff would conduct plan review and on-site inspection services. There's a range of possibilities with respect to the scope, and again, envision this could evolve over time, and permit fees would be the primary funding mechanism. This slide sort of covers what low, medium, and high scopes may look like. And so, for example, an initial or a low scope may focus on public buildings, which DFS currently has jurisdiction over, incorporating energy code verification into the permitting process, reviewing plans and submittals and RB certificates to ensure compliance, and logging certificates in DFS's record management system or permit database. And for single family owner occupied, maybe the only inclusion in a low scope scenario is that certificates for those homes are allowed to be filed in the DFS database. A medium scope might be just one notch up from that, where it includes everything in that low scope, but also some on-site inspections specifically for the energy code for a sample of priority buildings and or developments, and no change on the owner-occupied single-family side. And then a high scope would sort of be everything in that medium scope, and then actually layering on some formal oversight of owner-occupied single-family homes. Chris, go ahead, but I'm gonna suggest
keep
that
going. I'll ask after you're done. Keep going.
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest we just hold until I get through these, so that we kind of move things along. There is a potential role for energy professionals in this pathway as well. So certainly they could continue to support builders with plan review, blower door testing, etc. And their role could really evolve. It could be a supporting role for DFS. So energy professionals might be in a position to help train DFS staff if they needed to be brought up to speed on building science or RB's compliance nuances. The Division of Fire Safety could also recognize energy professionals as third-party inspectors, or if a project, and what that might look like is any project that has an energy professional involved in it doesn't necessarily need on-site inspections or plan review from DFS. They sort of accept that the energy professional is serving in that capacity on a project that includes an energy professional's involvement. And yeah, the fees, if there were a transition, say from sort of leveraging energy professionals to a more formal DFS pathway, there could be a transition from sort of builders or homeowners paying those fees to permit fees supporting DFS. As far as pricing goes, so Mr. DeRocher presented last year on the costs to administer the energy code for public buildings. And so we took those values along with the counts of projects from 2021 to 2023 and associated construction costs and calculated that the total cost from Mike's presentation would have been about a $600 incremental permit fee per project on average to include energy code administration for public buildings. That works out to $2.74 per $1,000 of construction cost on average. And that would be on top of the current $8 per $1,000 construction cost permit fee that exists for public buildings today. EFG took some of the assumptions from the DFS presentation for public buildings to estimate what the cost might be to implement similar coverage for owner-occupied single-family homes, which were not included in the almost $1.6 million estimate that DFS provided last year. So we do have a model that we could share that shows some of these calculations. If folks are interested in seeing that, I'm certainly happy to provide that if that's of value to this group. But basically, we looked at a range of permit activity. So how many homes are being built per year? What do those homes cost? And what would be sort of the administrative scope of DFS as far as inspections or energy code oversight? So all of those factors are going to play into what the costs would be to incorporate more comprehensive energy code administration from the state, specifically for single family homes. We calculated an estimate of $534 on average per project to include state administration of the energy code. The actuals certainly will vary. As we've talked about, there's a wide range of home sizes and construction costs across the state. So our model includes a range from $191 on the low end in terms of total permit fees up to, almost $1,200 per project. The average as far as a per $1,000 of construction costs, which is how the public building construction permits are priced, would be 85 cents per $1,000 of construction costs on average. And that's a range of 21 cents to $2.59. Again, that the variation there is based on different assumptions around how many homes are being built in the state, what the costs are associated with those houses, and what the administrative scope of DFS is, and therefore how many staff they might need, et cetera. I'll just quickly say this is a really helpful figure that AIA put together last year for the Act 151 working group, and it just sort of shows the type of transition we might see over time under such a pathway and sort of expanding scope from where we are today to 2030. And I'm going to flip it back to Richard to wrap us up with our recommendations that we make in the Energy Code Administration Plan. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
One last slide, and then we can open things up, Scott. Sorry, this took a little longer. So just the recommendations in our plan. We've talked about all these. This is sort of just a summary. Working towards that plan to transform to the DFS pathway by 2030. In the near term, encouraging a greater use of energy professionals, emphasizing the incentives and energy savings, hopefully through the energy efficiency utility claiming savings approach. So and then looking for ways, as we've talked about today, where energy professionals can support the DFS pathway in the longer term, sort of building an on-ramp with them under the other TA pathway and the energy professionals pathway on the way towards that longer term transition. So We think maybe you could do this without legislation. We thought it would certainly sort of solidify things if there was legislation that allowed the EEUs to claim savings, and at the same time claim savings and supporting their energy code work. Maybe you don't need to do that. If we can get there without legislation, that's always an easier path. The DFS database seems like a great opportunity to build in RB certificates as part of that, as a statewide repository for that information. This would also, I'm sure the town clerks would appreciate moving away from having that responsibility for filing certificates there. It would make it easier for doing studies in the future. It would be, one central repository rather than going to 251 pounds in the state would certainly be make administration of this much more efficient. Workforce development opportunities through energy professionals, build these opportunities, and we think that energy professionals would step up. There'd be new market-based businesses that would come into place. We've talked to some energy professionals who said they would bring on staff if there was more demand for their services. Supporting energy professional and builder matchmaking, the energy efficiency utilities already doing some of this, but this would create more of that. A sustainable funding model would certainly need to be part of any of these pathways moving forward. And at least in the near term, it feels like moving in this energy professional pathway would be an advancement, have the opportunity to advance our code compliance numbers in Vermont, and would eventually also pave the way for that ultimate DFS pathway. And with that, I think we are open to questions and discussion.
All right. I see Chris and Richard have hands up.
So I like the direction. I like getting municipalities out of it. One question I had, and I'm just reflecting back on when I oversaw an inspections and permit shop. So let's say we don't have a residential building code yet. The DFS folk are going in, they're confirming code compliance. What if they see something that would appear not to comport with their knowledge of code? And we don't have to answer that right now. I'm just throwing that out there.
You mean building code?
Good
or
question.
Energy code. Chris, you mean building code or energy code?
Building code.
Building code and fire code, frankly.
Yes.
And we don't have to answer that now. It's just a question.
Well, of course, that's one of the problems with not having anybody who is empowered to adjudicate between conflicts between codes. I don't know, Mike, did you have something you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about 1 and 2 family dwellings without a building code, just for clarification, we do use the IBC, the International Building Code, for 3 units and up. And so we do use our 101 Life Safety Code and our Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code amendments to use on 1 and 2 family dwellings. So if there's a code violation in a 1 and 2 family dwelling, people are written up and they're required to fix it. So that's been in existence since I've been here 35 years, and that's the way we've been doing this. So we run into problems in new construction on duplexes, which we run into. We require them to be repaired before occupancy is granted. And the other issue is that we go beyond the building code on 1 and 2 family dwellings because we actually enforce ADA regulations and our access rules on 1 and 2 family dwellings also. So I just add that as a piece there. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. I was just trying to figure.
Yeah.
I was thinking back to when I had to manage a department. I was thinking, man, I can see those folk coming back in the office saying, "Boy, you won't believe what I just saw," but I don't know if I have the ability to enforce it.
Yeah, and it's not just new construction; it's on existing 1 and 2 family dwellings as well. And we actually took and amended our rules by putting in the structural parts of the IBC I take that back. The IRC structural component is also in our amendment. So if somebody's got a deck that's about ready to fall off, we can refer to the IRC to fix that deck. Yep.
Zach, could you go back to slide 7? And Mike, is this table accurate, or is there more to be added to this? You mentioned ADA requirements and 1 and 2 family rentals. Oh, I think you're muted. You're muted. Mike, you're still muted.
Yeah, there doesn't have to, excuse me, be anything added to this. It is basically visitability standards that we refer those as. Your front entrance door has to be a 3-0 door, and there's just certain elements that are put into that are stipulated in our construction permits.
Okay, all right, good.
If you want to send this along or something to me, and I can review it again.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, I see Richard's hand up also.
Just a point of information, as I understood testimony over the last 2 years, DFS was not interested in expanding their jurisdiction or assessment past or beyond what they're already doing. And yet they're built into this handling jurisdiction.
Yeah.
These are different pathways, sort of optional pathways, right? For how we're going to get there. But sorry.
Yeah, these are just 3 potential pathways for the state to move forward, one of which would be the DFS administered energy code pathway.
It looked like they were involved in all 3, but that's okay. You guys
well, as the group goes forward here, I think next month I'm due to put together some type of update and presentation, and at that point I'll try to reiterate what our positions are, but at the same time try to maneuver. I understand where everybody sits on this group, and try to see where some common ground can't be gained here, while being mindful of the housing issue, resources in our division, what the political climate is, what the appetite would be for expanding our jurisdiction, all that stuff. I know all that stuff. And so we'll see what the Division of Fire Safety can do, to make some headway in areas here, being mindful of those factors I just raised. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you, Zach and Richard.
Yeah.
It's a really comprehensive.
Thanks for the opportunity to present.
Yeah, overview. Really appreciate it. So let's see, we ran a little over. That's fine.
Well, Scott, I would suggest that we've made some progress on the bulk of the agenda as well, too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, next I was just going to describe a bill that I introduced last session, H-181, which tried to implement some of the recommendations from last fall's report, which was the first half of this working group. And we did take, the committee that I'm on, Energy and Digital Infrastructure, did take quite a bit of testimony in April, last couple of weeks of April, from many of the people who are in this room on H-181. And I believe the chair of my committee is committed to moving forward with something next year. I'm hoping that we will have perhaps even more flesh to add to the bones for a bill next year. But just to quickly, there go over what was in that H-181 as introduced. It did envision continuing this working group until we actually have an authority having jurisdiction to enforce building energy codes. It also looked at a way of attributing energy savings to code compliance, again, for the purpose of being able to provide, allowing EEUs to be able to provide funding for code compliance activities. It also addressed a concern that we heard from builders last year's working group regarding the timing of implementation of updated energy codes. The energy codes have been getting updated on a 3-year cycle in sync with the issuance of updates to the International Energy Code Council, which is, like I say, every 3 years. The builders last year were concerned about being sure that they had the associated materials necessary in order to be able to implement those codes in their projects as they were coming up. Of course, one of the issues last year was the code update to the 2020, which became the 2024 Energy Code, RBs and CBs, was delayed pending the work of the working group last year, and then as it came time to implement it last July, it was some projects were already underway anyway. It was a little bit of a one-off problem, it seems to me. But another thing that was included in the bill was asking the Department of Public Service to develop a methodology, a sort of an accepted methodology for calculating and reporting greenhouse gas reductions annually. This was sort of a side issue with code compliance, but more aligned with the requirements of the Global Warming Solutions Act that we meet certain greenhouse gas reductions on a schedule that was required in the law, is required in the law. And another recommendation was to reduce the threshold for OPR's builder residential contractor registration. The threshold is currently $10,000 on a per project basis. That if a contractor does a project that is $10,000 or more, then they're required to register. OPR's status report on the builder registry last September indicated that they're seeing a gap, but for projects below $10,000 where builders are not required to register, but they're still in some cases not providing that high threshold is not providing consumer protection that they were seeking. I'm sure, I see Jennifer just turned her camera on. I'm sure that she will have something to say about this next at our next meeting. They'll be doing some oh no, yeah, it is next meeting.
Correct. Yep.
If you'd like to say something about that now, Jennifer.
I mean, yeah, we're working on the certifications, and I'm happy to provide an update next time. So, and the utility of the map and all of those things that we were talking about in our last kind of iteration of these meetings. So,
okay, well, that's fine. We'll look forward to that. So let's see. So we've really, as Richard mentioned, we've really addressed a lot of the things in the in sort of the discussion period that I had guessed that we might have about 75 minutes to talk about. Actually, looks like we'll have a little bit less than that, maybe an hour or so. So topics that were called out in the 2024 working group report that were sort of left hanging or remaining after that that group suspended meetings, last fall. One was the phased transition of Energy Code Authority to Division of Fire Safety, which has Zach and Richard addressed in their presentation. Another was including owner-occupied Energy Code compliance certificates in the new DFS database. Mike is going to talk about that next week or next month, rather. Third is clarifying business versus individual residential contractor registration at OPR, and the responsibility for tracking all building trades, working with DFS and OPR to do that. I think that's something that's going to bear some discussion probably next month. Also, as OPR gives us an update on what the status of their residential contractor registration or registry is. Same with the next item, which is clarifying OPR's references to the term license. As I understand it, OPR views registration as a light form of licensure. So their standard terminology is to refer to the registration as a license, but the sort of a colloquial understanding of the term license is that it requires some sort of credential or some sort of competency testing. But that might be the colloquial understanding, but it's not the sort of technical understanding OPR is using there. But it might be helpful for builders and actually even more so for the public to understand that term is what we're really talking about here is a registry. It's just a name and address and, oh yes, I have insurance kind of registry for the contractor registration. Also assessing the future of residential building code and permitting processes that include single family owner occupied. Again, that is an issue that DFS is not interested in, or sort of a step that DFS is not interested in taking at this time. DFS has jurisdiction over all public buildings, which does include single family buildings if they're rentals, but not over single family owner occupied. And that would be a large increase in their jurisdiction. So they would need a way of handling that and paying for that. There were tables that were provided by AIA Vermont as their proposed work plan. One of those was included in the slides that Zach and Richard showed. That one with the sort of timeline of years laid out, showing how jurisdiction over these codes would develop. I think that I sent that. I wonder if that got sent out to everyone. I think I sent that to Kelly and Richard to include, and I don't remember whether that was included in the in what was sent to everyone. Kelly or Ben, do you remember whether you
I don't think we got that. We sent everything out that you had forwarded. I don't think that was included, but we're happy to send it out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send it again to you if
Okay.
Maybe I missed it. It was four sort of tables that AIA Vermont and I think maybe the Builders Association had also put together as sort of their proposed roadmap for how we get there. I think that would be useful to look
Okay.
at and for further conversation.
Yeah, we can post it on our the webpage too.
Okay, great. I'll send that along to you.
So actually, I think that was included in separate email. I sent an email last Friday with kind of the schedule, and then the AIA tables were included in an email I sent on, I believe, on Monday.
Oh, sorry, Ben. I didn't realize that.
Okay.
No worries. There was a lot of emails, so.
Yeah, we'll put it on the web page too if we haven't already.
Okay, great. Let's see, and the last item, topic from the 2024 working group was reviewing the existing OPR registered professions for opportunities to include energy code training and licensure registration and or renewal. One of the things that occurs to me is that OPR handles registration or licensure of architects and engineers, for example, and there are credentials and continuing education requirements. Actually, I wonder who does administer that. If the continuing education requirements, maybe Jennifer, you know the answer to that.
What do you mean, who administers it? Like,
well, if there are requirements, say for architects to have continuing education requirements on an annual basis,
they have to upload that information to OPR, and they're not able to renew unless they have completed that work. And then we do random audits, and you know, I believe we give folks the opportunity, if a random audit reveals that maybe they're a few hours short, that they can do that work. But ultimately, if they don't take corrective action there, I think that becomes an enforcement matter. But we do have a lot of this. This is something that Richard Fazy and I talked about last year. We have a lot of professions that touch real estate. And we have property inspectors, which is a huge opportunity there. We have real estate brokers and salespeople, architects, engineers. So I do see that there's an opportunity there for us to talk about what kind of CE requirements could we have to help inform professions that touch upon real estate about RBs and compliance.
Yeah, that seems like that would be fruitful to explore also. All right, well, those are the topics that were listed in the 2024 report. Does anybody have any thoughts on any of those? Or are we all exhausted now after 2 hours? Seeing nothing. Well, I guess I will say that I am hoping.
Sandy's got her hand up.
Who does? Oh, there we go. Sandy. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Sandy.
Hi, sorry, I'm just pulling over. Yep, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm pulling over. So AIA Vermont, but particularly VBRA wrote 2 letters last year about a couple of different issues that were contained in the 2023 report, but not in the 2024 report. And they became kind of more developed after it was too late in the process for the 2024 report. So I think it might be helpful if those 2 organizations submit their letters. And I know the AIA right now is writing a letter of what they hope this year's group will accomplish. So we're hoping that that'll be useful for the group.
I think that would be very useful. I remember getting those letters, but I'm not sure if I'm finding them right now.
Yeah, there've been a lot of letters. So we'll be sending them in the next week to week and a half, with the holiday. Next week's going to be a bit rough, but we're working on it, and we're just trying to make sure that we're thorough.
Yes, I see one from September 27th. Is that one of them?
we wrote, basically VBRA wrote one to OPR and one to public service.
Public service. Okay, this one is actually to DFS, to Mike.
Oh,
So
the fire safety one. Plexes.
Sorry.
And that may have been from September. So actually there are 3 letters. Whew. But the one to fire safety about the IRC is a little bit more detail oriented. I don't know if it's more policy level.
Could you resend those? Sam?
Yes, I happily can. Would you want me just to send them to you and to Seth? And then you decide what you're going to do with them, or do you want me to send them to all 15 members?
You could send them to me and Seth and Kelly, please.
Okay. Okay, will do.
And then Kelly can distribute it or post it on the website.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other questions or conversation about this? I guess I will say that I am hoping to come out of this series of meetings this year, the working group meetings, with a more concrete proposal about how we're going to incentivize basically voluntary compliance with energy codes. I'm seeing various mechanisms for doing that. One is really raising the profile of the builder registry, making it more user-friendly in terms of accessing it for the public, adding some fields to the database that the OPR has in place now for builders who are getting registered. A couple of fields being what trades are contractors, trade services are contractors willing to provide. Another being what service areas are they willing to serve. And I understand, I had a good conversation with Jennifer this morning about the sort of challenges that they're facing with I don't know how many other professions you regulate, 50 or 70 or something like that, and the work that they're involved in with that. But I see this as a really important dimension in making the registry effective. If nobody can access it easily, then its effectiveness is really limited. So that's one thing, and then enhancing the registry also with sort of a ladder of certifications that builders again would be incentivized to acquire in order to market themselves to the public, and sort of advertise that they have expertise. And that marketing actually to the public is another dimension of making that registry useful, making sure that people are aware, consumers are aware that there is a registry and that there's useful information there. So that seems like a fruitful pathway, one of the many sort of overlapping pathways that would help increase voluntary compliance. What we're really after, of course, is getting the industry trained in the issues around not only energy efficiency, but in particular around moisture management, so that we are not building buildings that are creating problems for people, and even as serious as creating rot and mold and mildew and structural failures, which we have certainly examples of that happening. So that's sort of what I'm thinking of as a goal for this group is coming up with a more concrete sort of program for getting there. And I'm really hoping that that's where we can wind up. So the next meeting we have scheduled for July 24th, and that will be in person. All the rest of the meetings this year will be in person as well as on Zoom. So there'll be hybrid meetings. People who have long distance travel or can't make it can participate via Zoom. Next meeting, we're looking forward to hearing from OPR about the status of the builder registry. They did issue a status report last September, which made certain recommendations, one of which was basically to eliminate the $10,000 threshold, again, from the point of view of consumer protection. Because obviously a certain percentage of projects are left out if we set a reasonably high threshold. Excuse me. And then we'll also hear from them about the certifications, the voluntary certifications, how that's going, and various aspects about the website and other fields that we might ask builders to provide information on what trade services they provide and what areas of the state they serve. We'll also hear from Mike DeRocher, Division of Fire Safety. DFS has been working on working out what would be required to adopt a residential building code. The state does not have a residential building code at this time, which leaves 1- and 2-family buildings out in terms of a standard of care, standard of requirements, and so even if DFS is not in a position to enforce a residential building code in single-family owner-occupied housing, just having a residential building code would be useful for builders to reference, for homeowners to reference, for insurance companies to reference, and in case there is an issue with a building and it becomes a matter of litigation, for courts to reference. And so DFS will also give us some updates on how they're handling to the extent to which they're coordinating with OPR on the voluntary certifications and potential other certifications that may overlap with other trades. So perhaps some sort of dimension about RBs as it affects plumbers, electricians, heating technicians, and other trades that they currently provide licenses for. So that's next month on July 24th. And further meetings are scheduled for basically the third week in the month in August, September, and October. And we are intending to wrap up by November 6th with approving last edits and a final report, which is due on November 15th. And that is sort of as far as I've scoped out our meeting sort of work outline so far. I'm wondering if anybody has any comments or questions, or we can open it up for public comment.
Just quick. You reference the high threshold of $10,000. $10,000 is nothing in construction today. And we have to remember, because you'll say it's a lot for the consumer. I know you will. And we have to remember then, what is the threshold that we're willing to increase the cost of building? Because I don't care if you're talking EPs, you're talking jurisdiction, permitting, what, just depending on how much you think. If the consumer can't afford $10,000 at risk, then what can they afford in the raise in the cost of actual building these houses? Just want to point that out, and we can talk about that later. Thank you.
No, it's a good point. Jennifer, I had talked about this morning about the threshold effectively getting lowered as time goes on, and inflation means that, as you say, $10,000 doesn't buy much in terms of construction, in terms of a project. But Sandy, I think you had your hand up as well.
Yeah. My question is, who's writing the report this year?
All right, that's a good question. Who is writing the report this year?
The department.
The department. Yep. I mean, the department contracted with Efficient Energy Futures Group last year, and this year did not have budget for that. So, I guess the department internally is going to write the report this year.
That we are.
Okay. Great. Who do we have here from the public? Do we still have? Oh, I see Liz Steele is still here. I see Chris just turned his camera on. Do you have something to say? No. Is there any public comment?
I'm good. Thank you, though, Scott, for asking. Appreciate it.
All right. Great. Well, are we going to wrap up early? Kind of looks like we are.
Scott, thank you for handling the meeting. It's been great seeing you all again.
Yes, and I look forward to seeing folks in person next month.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you next month. Bye-bye.